Hello, I'm Dr. Melanie Grace Cruz, and today we're going to talk about the anatomy of the pharynx. Now for an overview, so think of the pharynx as a funnel-shaped tube extending from the skull base down to the esophagus. Okay, except that it is not entirely a tube because it has openings on the anterior portion corresponding to the back of the nose, back of the oral cavity, and the larynx. Hence the name nasopharynx, oropharynx, and laryngopharynx. There are also two types of muscles in the pharynx, the three constrictors, three longitudinal muscles, and another one is the cricopharyngeus. So the three constrictor muscles are the superior constrictor, middle constrictor, and inferior constrictor muscles. So these muscles overlap each other. So think of stacking three cups. So the middle cup or the middle muscle is outside the superior constrictor, while the inferior constrictor lies outside the middle constrictor. Again, the pharynx is a funnel-shaped muscle extending from the skull base down to the esophagus, opposite the sixth cervical vertebra. It has a musculomembranous wall which is deficient anteriorly, corresponding to the nose, which is what we call choana, opening into the mouth or the oral cavity, and inlet of the larynx. The pharynx is also continuous with the middle ear via the eustachian tube, as you can see here. Now let's go to the muscles of the pharynx. So the muscles in the wall of the pharynx consists of constrictors and longitudinally arranged muscles. For the constrictors, we have the superior, the middle, and inferior constrictor muscles. And their fibers are somewhat circular in direction. Okay? And they extend around the pharyngeal wall to insert into a fibrous band, which is this one, or raphe. Okay? From the pharyngeal tubercle on the basilar part of the occipital bone down to the esophagus. Okay, so like we mentioned earlier, the three constrictor muscles overlap each other. Okay, and the lower part of the inferior constrictor arises from the cricoid cartilage, and it is called the cricopharyngeus muscle, and it acts like a sphincter. Okay, because the fibers of the cricopharyngeus, as you can see here, are horizontally arranged. Okay, and this is the pharynx from the lateral view. Okay, again, this is the superior constrictor, the middle constrictor, and the inferior constrictor. And we also have the three longitudinal muscles, the stylopharyngeus, salpingopharyngeus, and the palatopharyngeus, which we will discuss in more detail later. The cricopharyngeus is this muscle right here. It is located in the lower part of the inferior constrictor, which arises from the cricoid cartilage. And again, it has horizontal fibers that goes around the lowest portion of the pharynx. We also have this thing called the Killian's dehiscence or Killian's triangle. It is the area on the posterior pharyngeal wall between the upper propulsive part of the inferior constrictor and the lower sphincter part of the cricopharyngeus. Okay, it represents a potentially weak spot where a pharyngoesophageal diverticulum may occur. It is also a potential site of perforation, particularly during esophagoscopy. Esophagoscopy is what we do when we have to remove foreign bodies in the esophagus of, let's say, children or adults. Okay, this is a summary of the different muscles of the pharynx. As you can see, we have the three constrictors, and we also have the three longitudinal muscles, the stylopharyngeus, salpingopharyngeus, and the palatopharyngeus. And also the sphincter, which is the cricopharyngeus. Please note that later we will discuss the palatopharyngeus, but the salpingopharyngeus is a muscle that blends primarily with the palatopharyngeus. For the nerve supply, you can see that all of them are innervated by the pharyngeal plexus, except for the stylopharyngeus, which derives its innervation solely on the glossopharyngeal nerve. And one thing you should remember with the muscles of the pharynx is that the action is of course, related to the direction of the muscle fibers and its attachment. So, for example, the constrictor muscles will constrict whatever is inside. So, it functions by propelling bolus of food downwards. Okay, the cricopharyngeus is a sphincter, and the stylopharyngeus, based on its attachment, that it's attached to the xyloid and the pharynx, it elevates the larynx during swallowing. And it's the same with the salpingopharyngeus and the palatopharyngeus. Okay, this is just for emphasis. What is the pharyngeal plexus? So the pharyngeal plexus is basically the vagus nerve combining with the fibers of the glossopharyngeal nerve, as you can see here. Okay, so you have the vagus nerve here and you have the glossopharyngeal nerve here to form the pharyngeal plexus. Again, the pharynx is divided into three parts: the nasal pharynx, the blue one, the oral pharynx or the oropharynx, the green, and the laryngopharynx. And this is the mid-sagittal view. If we are going to look at the pharynx from posterior, from behind, we can see that this is the opening into the nasal cavity, the oral cavity. You can see the tongue base right there. There's the uvula, and this is the inlet of the larynx. Okay, nasopharynx, oropharynx, laryngopharynx. Let's go to the nasal pharynx or the nasopharynx. So this lies above the soft palate and behind the nasal cavities. Okay, and we have the following terms. First, we have the adenoids, or what we call the pharyngeal tonsils. So they're located in the submucosa of the pharyngeal roof, which is indicated here. We also have this pharyngeal isthmus. Okay, it is an opening in the floor between the soft palate, which is this one, and the posterior pharyngeal wall. We also have the auditory tube, which is right here. Let's enlarge this region. Okay, this is the eustachian tube or the auditory tube. So this is an opening found on the lateral pharyngeal area. Okay, and we also have this torus tubarius, which is a mucosal elevation in the lateral part of the nasopharynx, posterior to the opening of the eustachian tube. Okay, and you also have the salpingopharyngeal fold, which is a vertical fold of mucous membrane covering the salpingopharyngeus muscle. The oral pharynx lies behind the oral cavity. For its boundaries, the floor is from the posterior 1/3 of the tongue and the interval between the tongue, which is this location here, and the epiglottis. Okay, for the midline, let's bring up the picture of the tongue. So this is the tongue. We're looking at it from the top, and this is the posterior third of the tongue. Okay, we have the tonsils on the lateral, bilaterally. Okay, so midline, we have this structure here represented by the green arrow. This is called the median glossoepiglottic fold. So if you're going to follow the name, glosso, which is the tongue, epiglottis. Okay, and you also have the lateral glossoepiglottic fold. And you also have this vallecula. Okay, vallecula is this region right here. It's a depression on each side of the median glossoepiglottic fold. Okay. Okay, let's go to the oral pharynx. So when we open our mouths, we can see this region right here. Okay, so we have the palatoglossal arch and the palatopharyngeal arch. Okay, so it connects the palate and the tongue. So that's the palatoglossal arch, which is the anterior pillar. And you also have the palatopharyngeal arch, which connects the tongue and the pharynx. So this forms the posterior pillar. And in between these arches, we can see the palatine tonsil. Okay, so remember that that mucosa covers both the muscular arches. Okay, and there is this thing called the oropharyngeal isthmus, which is the space in between the arches, and it marks the boundary of the mouth and the pharynx. The laryngeal pharynx lies behind the opening into the larynx. So the lateral wall is formed by the thyroid cartilage in the thyrohyoid membrane. Okay, and here we are looking at the pharynx from the posterior side. Okay, and I want to emphasize the piriform fossa. okay, which is technically something that you may see here. Okay, so the piriform fossa is a depression in the mucous membrane on each side of the laryngeal inlet. Okay, so for context, this is a laryngoscopy view. This is the epiglottis. These are the vocal folds. These are the arytenoids. Okay, and of course we have the medial glossoepiglottic fold and the lateral glossoepiglottic fold. Okay, so let's see. So when a person is talking, so the vocal cords will move together. Okay, as you can see, there are spaces behind the vocal folds. Okay, and this is what we call the piriform sinus or piriform fossa, and it is continuous with the esophagus. The nerve supply to the pharyngeal mucous membrane actually depends on the location. If you can remember from our previous lecture for the nasal cavity, the nose or the nasal cavity is innervated by the trigeminal nerve. But specifically for the nasopharynx, it is innervated by the maxillary nerve V2. The oropharynx is innervated by the glossopharyngeal nerve. For the laryngopharynx, or around the entrance into the larynx, it is innervated by the internal laryngeal branch of the vagus nerve. Now for review, this is the vagus nerve, okay, and it gives off two main branches, the superior laryngeal nerve and the inferior laryngeal nerve, or something that you would more commonly know as the recurrent laryngeal nerve. Okay, it's called the recurrent laryngeal nerve because instead of going directly to where it's supposed to innervate, it loops around several structures. For the right side, it's the subclavian artery here, and for the left side, it's the arch of the aorta. Okay, now going back, for the superior laryngeal nerve, it has two branches, the internal branch and the external branch. Note that the internal branch is sensory, while the external branch is motor to the cricothyroid muscle. Okay, the superior laryngeal nerve internal branch pierces the thyrohyoid membrane. The blood supply to the pharynx is very similar to the blood supply of the tonsils. Okay, so again, here we have the external carotid artery, and it will give off couple of branches. So for this one, we have the lingual artery, and we also have the tonsillar branch of the facial artery. We have the ascending pharyngeal artery, and we have the branches of the maxillary artery. The pharynx may either drain directly into the deep cervical lymph nodes, as you can see here, or indirectly via the retropharyngeal or paratracheal nodes, which will eventually go into the deep cervical nodes. This picture in the middle, you can see that there are green areas. So these green areas are potential spaces, but they can become true spaces when they become infiltrated with infection. Okay, now let's proceed to the palatine tonsils. Okay, so they are lymphoid tissue located in the oral pharynx in between the palatoglossal and the palatopharyngeal arches, as you can see here, palatoglossal, palatopharyngeal. Okay, the surface is pitted by numerous small openings that lead into the tonsillar crypts, as you can see here. So these are hypertrophic tonsils. Okay, and you can see the uvula in the middle. Okay, the lateral surface is covered by a fibrous capsule. It's this region right here, which we cannot actually see. And this capsule separates it from the superior constrictor, okay, via loose areolar tissue. And lateral to the superior constrictor muscle lie the styloglossus muscle, the loop of the facial artery, and the internal carotid artery. So that's why tonsillectomy is typically a little bit bloody, especially if you do not have the correct plane or if you dissect too laterally. So bleeding is one of the dreaded complications of tonsillectomy because of its proximity to these vascular structures. Now, this is just an emphasis of the different structures or the proximity of the tonsil to the vessels. Okay, for the blood supply of the tonsils, the primary blood supply is the tonsillar branch of the facial artery. So again, we have the external carotid artery here, And then we have the facial artery here, which will give off a branch to the ascending palatine artery and the tonsillar artery. Okay, so the veins pierce the superior constrictor muscle and join the external palatine, the pharyngeal, and the facial veins. And the lymph drainage of the tonsil is the upper deep cervical lymph node, much like the pharynx, like we mentioned earlier. Now let's talk about the Waldeyer's ring. So it is a ring of lymphoid tissue surrounding the respiratory and digestive system. So again, for reference, this is the nasopharynx, this is the oropharynx, and this is the laryngopharynx. And we've already talked about the palatine tonsils, which we can see here. Okay, and then we also have the tubal tonsils, which are extensions of the pharyngeal tonsils. Okay, superiorly we can see the pharyngeal tonsils, also known as the adenoids, and on the base of the tongue we can see the lingual tonsils. Okay, so if you can remember, this is the nasal endoscopy. We're entering the right nasal cavity. Okay, so this is the Eustachian tube here. This is the anterior lip, posterior lip, and we have the orifice here. Okay, this is the torus tubarius here. Okay, and posteriorly, this is the nasopharynx. And if there are enlarged adenoids, we can see it there. Okay, and posterior to the torus, we can see the fossa of Rosenmuller, which is actually a common area for malignancy, or where we commonly look for malignancies in patients with suspected nasopharyngeal carcinoma. Okay, so now let's talk about the process of swallowing. Okay, but before that, let me give you a little bit of review of anatomy. So this is the nasopharynx, this is the oropharynx, and this is the laryngopharynx. This structure right here is the palate. So this is the hard palate, soft palate. The green one is just a bolus of food. This is the tongue. Okay, and anteriorly we have the trachea. Posteriorly we have the collapsed esophagus. This is the epiglottis, and this muscle right here is the cricopharyngeus. Okay, so now we have four different stages for the process of swallowing. Okay, the first one is the oral preparatory stage, followed by the oral transit stage, pharyngeal stage, and the esophageal stage. Here in the oral preparatory stage, the food is formed into a ball, okay, or bolus, with the help of the tongue and saliva. So after this, we have the oral transit stage. Here, the food or the bolus is pushed superiorly and backwards to the undersurface of the palate. Okay, and this also happens with the help of the styloglossus and the palatoglossus. We know by the name styloglossus, it is attached to the styloid, which is perhaps located here, styloid, and the tongue. Okay, so when it contracts, it will pull backward the root of the tongue. Okay, while the palatoglossus, we know it as the anterior pillar of the tongue, of the tonsil. Okay, so when it contracts, it squeezes the bolus of food backwards uh, into the pharynx. Okay, so now let's proceed. So also during this phase, the soft palate closes off the nasopharynx. Okay, so that food or drinks or other liquids will not regurgitate up the nose. Okay, so here we have the pharyngeal phase, and please remember that the pharyngeal phase is already involuntary. Both the oral preparatory and oral transit stages are voluntary. Okay, so perhaps this is the reason why we see a lot of foreign body ingestion in children. Okay, because they like to explore things with their mouths, and when it reaches or when it touches the pharyngeal wall, it becomes involuntary, and they have no other choice than to just swallow the foreign body. Okay, so again, the pharyngeal stage is a rapid sequential activity where the bolus is propelled down into the esophagus. Okay, please note here that as the food goes downwards, the larynx elevates, the epiglottis closes the airway, so it protects it, and the bolus of food is directed posteriorly into the esophagus. Okay, And before that, the cricopharyngeus, this sphincter here, will open up, allowing the bolus to pass through. And when the bolus passes through, after that, the the cricopharyngeus will close. Okay, again, generally preventing regurgitation back up the oral cavity. Okay, and then it goes down to the esophagus and the stomach via peristalsis. And that is it for my lecture. Thank you for listening.